Hello, dear YouTube viewers, I hope you're doing well. Okay, so let's start our video. It was a silent night in the suburbs, the kind of calm that almost feels heavy. The faint glow of streetlights slipped through the curtains, casting long shadows across the living room where Ryan sat alone, the quiet hum of his laptop the only sound in the house. He'd been finishing a coding project, trying to distract himself from the ticking clock and the empty space beside him. Emily had told him earlier that evening she'd be home by 11. It was her friend's birthday dinner, something she'd seemed oddly nervous about attending. He'd smiled, kissed her on the cheek, and told her to have fun. That was 5 hours ago. Now the digital clock on the wall flashed 3:47 a.m. He glanced at his phone again, the same dull screen lighting up his face. Still nothing. No missed calls, no new messages. His chest tightened. Maybe there was traffic. Maybe someone got sick. Maybe he stopped himself. Every maybe felt heavier than the last. He opened their last conversation. Her final message had come at 10:08 p.m. Love you. Don't wait up, red heart. At the time, it had felt ordinary. Now, under the weight of the night, it felt rehearsed, too neat, too polished, like a pre-recorded excuse. His mind tried to reason, but instinct whispered louder. Something was wrong. He leaned back, rubbing his temples, his laptop screen dimming into sleep mode. The quiet tick of the clock filled the room again. Then his phone buzzed, slicing through the silence. The sound startled him. He picked it up quickly, thumb trembling slightly as he opened the message. Something came up. Relax, I'll explain soon. For a few seconds, he just stared. The message was short, casual, almost careless. But the timing, 4:03 a.m., made it feel like a confession in disguise. His stomach knotted. He didn't type back right away. His thoughts raced through every possibility, every excuse she might give. But beneath all that noise, one truth began to form, a truth he didn't want to believe. Finally, he opened the keyboard, his pulse steady but cold. His fingers hovered for a moment before pressing each key with certainty. No. No explanations. No excuses. No pretending this was normal. He hit send. The message delivered, then marked as read. But there was no reply. Just silence. Ryan sat there for a long time, staring at the dim glow of his phone screen, feeling something inside him shift. It wasn't rage. It wasn't heartbreak yet. It was something deeper, a quiet awareness that the life he'd trusted might never look the same again. Somewhere outside, a car passed, its headlights flickering across the curtains before fading away. The house felt emptier than before. He exhaled slowly, realizing that something, though he couldn't name it yet, had changed tonight. The front door creaked open just after sunrise. Emily stepped inside, her movements slow and uncertain. Her hair was tangled, makeup faded into soft shadows beneath her eyes. The faint trace of a perfume Ryan didn't recognize lingered in the air, sweet, sharp, unfamiliar. She paused when she saw him sitting at the kitchen table, his coffee untouched, his eyes calm but distant. For a moment, neither spoke. Then, with a shaky smile, she said softly, I stayed at Jenna's. We had too much to drink, so I crashed there. Ryan only nodded. No questions. No raised voice. Just silence, the kind that makes guilt louder. She tried to busy herself, placing her purse down, pouring herself water, anything to avoid his gaze. He watched quietly, every movement recorded in his mind like fragments of a story he didn't want to finish reading. Breakfast passed without a word. The clink of her spoon against the bowl sounded painfully loud in the stillness. She kept checking her phone, quick glances, subtle swipes. He noticed, of course. He noticed everything. But he said nothing. In his head, the puzzle pieces began to align. The late-night meetings, the new gym routine, the sudden bursts of energy followed by distance, the way she'd started flipping her phone face down whenever a message came. Small things, invisible on their own, now glowed like warning signs he'd chosen to ignore. He looked at her across the table, realizing that trust doesn't shatter all at once. It fractures quietly, like glass cracking beneath pressure. By the time you hear it break, it's already been damaged for a long time. When she left for work, The silence stayed behind with him. Later that afternoon, Ryan met Mark at their usual cafe downtown. The scent of coffee beans and the hum of conversation did little to ease the weight in his chest. Mark listened quietly as Ryan explained everything. The 4 a.m. text, the excuses, the way she'd avoided his eyes. Mark leaned back, sighing. "You already know, man," he said bluntly. "You're just scared to confirm it." Ryan frowned. "I don't want to accuse her without proof." "What if I'm wrong?" "Then stop guessing," Mark replied. "Find the truth. But prepare yourself. You might not like what you see." That night, Ryan sat in the dim light of his office, staring at her phone on the desk. It vibrated once with a message, then fell still. He hesitated, breathing heavily, before connecting it to their shared cloud account. Within minutes, a location tracker synced. He watched the blinking appear on a screen, her phone's heartbeat pulsing quietly on a digital map. His hands shook as he closed the laptop. For the first time, he realized that finding the truth might cost him more than ignorance ever could. Over the next week, patterns began to emerge. Every few nights, Emily stayed late at work. Each time, the dot moved to the same area, downtown near the river. Between 9 p.m. and 1 a.m., she stayed in that same location. Ryan zoomed in, heart sinking. It wasn't an office. It was a small boutique hotel. He sat there, the glow of the screen reflecting in his eyes, a quiet war raging inside him. Part of him wanted to confront her, to scream, to demand answers. The other part, colder, more rational, decided to wait. He would collect the truth piece by piece, even if it tore him apart in the process. And as each night passed, the man who once trusted blindly felt something inside him erode quietly, grain by grain, until all that was left was silence and suspicion. Friday evening arrived wrapped in the soft hum of rain against the windows. Emily stood by the mirror, adjusting her blazer, the glow of the lamp catching on her earrings. "I'll be late tonight," she said, slipping on her heels. "We're finalizing a product launch with a client, could go past midnight." Ryan smiled faintly, as if it were nothing unusual. "Good luck," he said, leaning in to kiss her cheek. The gesture was natural, practiced, but inside, something in him felt cold and detached. He watched her grab her purse and keys, her perfume trailing behind her as the door closed. The moment she drove off, he followed. His car lights stayed dim, his distance careful. The rain thickened, streaking across his windshield, blurring everything but her taillights, a ghostly red glow in the storm. His wipers beat in rhythm with his heart. Downtown lights shimmered through the downpour as she pulled into the lot beside the Linden Suites Hotel. Ryan's grip on the steering wheel tightened. He parked a few spaces away, turning off his headlights. Through the fogged glass, he saw her step out, phone in hand, waiting. Moments later, a man approached, tall, sharply dressed, his umbrella tilting just enough to shield her as they greeted each other. Ryan's stomach twisted. Even from that distance, he knew the face, David, her boss. The man she'd mentioned casually over dinner, the one she barely talked to outside work. He felt the world narrow to that one moment, the hum of the city fading behind the pounding of his heart. The sight hit harder than any confession ever could. He sank lower in his seat, phone in hand, the record button glowing faintly red. Through the drizzle, he filmed. Emily and David walked together toward the hotel entrance, their movements synchronized in quiet familiarity. Their hands brushed, once, twice, before David's arm gently settled at her back. The gesture was intimate, instinctive. They entered the lobby. For a brief second, she turned her head, scanning the street as if sensing something. Ryan froze, heart in his throat. But her eyes passed over him, seeing nothing through the curtain of rain. The elevator doors closed behind them. Ryan stopped recording. His hands trembled, the phone slipping slightly between his fingers. He sat there in the stillness, listening to the rain pound harder on the roof, each drop echoing like a countdown to the end of something he'd once believed unbreakable. Tears stung, but not from shock, rather from confirmation. A quiet, heavy truth replaced every doubt he'd held on to. He started the car, the wipers cutting through the storm as he drove away, face expressionless, body on autopilot. Back home, he transferred the video, sat in the dark, and watched. Once. Then again. Every movement replayed like a scene from someone else's life, one he couldn't believe he was living. He closed the laptop, his voice barely above a whisper. Proof doesn't heal pain. With one slow breath, he deleted the video. Hours later, his phone buzzed again. It was 2:07 a.m. Don't wait up. I'm crashing at Jenna's. He stared at the message, expression empty. Then he typed back. Jenna moved to Chicago last week. Minutes passed. The typing dots appeared, vanished, reappeared. Then her reply came. I'll explain tomorrow. He typed 2 words that felt final. No need. No explanation could rebuild what had died in the rain. He set the phone down, staring into the quiet that followed, a silence deeper than anger, heavier than grief. The kind of silence that doesn't break, it replaces everything. The sky was pale and gray when Emily returned, her step slow, her eyes shadowed from a sleepless night. The front door creaked open softly, the smell of coffee drifting from the kitchen. Ryan sat at the table, hands folded, a steaming mug beside him. His expression was calm, too calm. She hesitated in the doorway, trying to read him, to guess how much he knew. You're up early, she said, voice thin and unsure. He looked at her, eyes steady. How long has it been? Her smile faltered. What do you mean? Don't, he said quietly, cutting her off before she could weave another lie. I saw you. The color drained from her face. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed again. For a heartbeat, she looked as though she might lie anyway, but the fight drained out of her shoulders. Her eyes glistened. Tears began to fall as she sank into the nearest chair. 6 months, she whispered. It wasn't supposed to happen. It started as work dinners and then we got close. I didn't plan for it to become this. Ryan said nothing, just listened. The coffee steamed between them, untouched. She tried to reach for his hand. I swear, I still love you. He looked at her then, and his voice came out quiet, almost gentle. No. You loved the comfort I gave, not the man I am. Her tears came harder. Please, Ryan. We can fix this. I'll quit my job. I'll do anything. He shook his head slowly. You already spent the forgiveness you're asking for. The silence that followed was unbearable. She sobbed into her hands, and he just sat there, staring at the wall, his mind empty, his heart already miles away. By late morning, he was packing. A small duffel bag, just clothes, a few essentials, nothing sentimental. Emily stood in the hallway, tears streaking her face. You don't have to go, she said, her voice cracking. He zipped the bag and looked at her one last time. Fixing something only works if both people still want to, he said softly. I'm the only one left trying. She stepped in front of the door, desperate. Ryan, please don't walk out. We can talk, go to therapy, start over, anything. He didn't raise his voice, didn't cry. He simply said, there's nothing left to start from. And then he walked past her. The door closed gently behind him. No slamming, no shouting. Just the soft click of finality, the sound of something ending for real. Days slipped by in quiet repetition. Ryan stayed at Mark's apartment, sleeping on the couch, staring at the ceiling until sunrise. The city moved on around him, but his mind stayed trapped between memory and numbness. Sometimes he scrolled through his old messages with Emily, the ones full of laughter and future plans. Can't wait to grow old with you, red heart, she'd once written. Now, every word felt like a ghost, haunting him from a life that had dissolved overnight. Mark tried to help, tried to distract him with late-night takeout and bad movies, but Ryan barely spoke. His phone buzzed constantly, with Emily's messages. Please talk. I'm sorry. I'll explain. He read them all but never replied. One morning, he opened his laptop and drafted a short email. His hands didn't shake this time. Subject, final, attachment, divorce papers message. You can explain soon to yourself. He hit send, then closed the laptop. For the first time in weeks, The silence that followed didn't hurt. It felt like air after drowning, cold, raw, and honest. 6 months had passed, and Ryan's world looked nothing like it once did. The apartment he now called home was smaller, quieter, filled not with memories but with light. Morning sunlight streaming through wide windows, paintbrushes scattered across a wooden table, and unfinished canvases leaning against every wall. The silence no longer felt empty. It felt peaceful. He'd started painting again, something he hadn't done since college, something Emily once told him he'd grow out of. But here, in the solitude of his new life, it became his language, his therapy. Each stroke of color carried a piece of everything he'd felt, the confusion, the heartbreak, and the slow rebirth that followed. One painting stood apart from the rest. A large canvas stretched across the easel, a heart, cracked right down the middle, but not broken. Each fracture was sealed with shimmering veins of gold. It was inspired by kintsugi, the Japanese art of repairing broken pottery with precious metals, the belief that the breaks make something more beautiful, not less. He stepped back, studying it in silence. Beneath the heart, painted in neat, deliberate letters, was the title, For 03 a.m. That time, that single message, had once marked the collapse of everything he knew. Now, it marked the beginning of who he'd become. Ryan smiled faintly, a soft, honest smile. The pain hadn't vanished. It had simply transformed. Loss had turned into lesson, and heartbreak into art. For the first time, he didn't wish to forget. He was grateful he'd survived it. Weeks later, his work was featured in a local art exhibition. Dozens of people wandered the gallery, murmuring softly about the emotion in his paintings. And then, in the midst of it all, he saw her.
Emily.
She looked different, thinner, quieter, a shadow of the woman he once knew. Their eyes met briefly, but neither spoke. She moved slowly through the exhibit until she reached that painting, the one titled For 03 a.m. Her lips parted. 4:03 a.m., she whispered, recognition flickering in her eyes. She didn't need to ask, she already knew. Ryan stepped beside her, hands in his pockets. His voice was calm, steady. That was the night everything broke, he said softly, and the night I started rebuilding. She nodded, eyes glistening. It's beautiful, she murmured, voice trembling with regret. He gave a small, polite smile. Some things break, so we can finally see what they were made of. For a long moment, they stood there in silence, two people tied together by a story that no longer needed words. Then, quietly, she turned and walked away. No anger, no tears, no bitterness, just acceptance, the rarest kind of peace. Ryan watched her go, then looked back at his painting. The golden seams shimmered under the gallery lights, glowing like they were alive. Some wounds, he thought, don't close by forgetting. They close by creating something new. As the exhibition ended and the lights dimmed, Ryan's voice echoed softly, a narration over the final scene of his story. People think betrayal ends you, but sometimes it just introduces you to yourself. At 4 a.m., my world fell apart. By dawn, I started building a new one. Thanks for watching. For more videos, please subscribe our channel. Awesome visual story.